Upon saving Haurchefant from the Spear of the Fury, the minstrel dreams of a future where he may have lived, and the duty gauge resets as the alternate Dragonsong War begins. The arena transforms and King Thordan drops down and immediately casts Incarnation, reviving the tethered dragons to fight by his side. This is immediately followed by the Dragon's Eye, giving Thordan the Light of Ascalon buff, enhancing the damage of all of his attacks. The main tank will take 2 conal auto attacks that cleave as they did during our last bout with Thordan, before teleporting to the center of the arena, summoning the Knights of the Round, and casting Wrath of the Heavens. Wrath of the Heavens is another exhibition-style mechanic, where no boss is targetable and several mechanics must be resolved in quick succession. Immediately after Thordan disappears, 2 knights will drop down on the outside of the arena before Vedrfolnir, the White Dragon, appears between them. This dragon will be our relative north for the mechanic, so all players should identify it to position accordingly. After players move to their initial positions, Vedrfolnir casts Twisting Dive, dropping a twister beneath all 8 players' feet. As players drop their twisters, a warrior and mage knight will drop down at relative north and south. All players should identify where the warrior is at, as this will be the final safe spot for the mechanic that everyone must arrive at. An untargetable Thordan will reappear mid and cast Ascalon's Mercy Revealed, simultaneously hitting all 8 party members with a conal cleave that inflicts physical vulnerability up. After spreading to bait their cleaves, the party collapses onto the warrior to dodge the upcoming Donut AoE. Now that we've gone over the general flow of the mechanic, I'm going to go over finding your starting position, based on what mechanics target you, and how to resolve these various mechanics. At the start, 2 players will be tethered to the knights at relative north. 1 player will receive a blue prey icon over their head, and the remaining 5 players will have no mechanic. Let's start with the blue prey. We always send this player to relative northwest, as they will be hit with a massive circle AoE that inflicts magic vulnerability up to all players hit. The safe spot for this player is 2 tiles counterclockwise from the direct intercardinal. Next, the 2 tether players. Positioning for them is fairly simple. Just stretch the tether to the opposite side of the arena, using the phantom lines on the floor of the arena to line up your tether. After a delay, these players will be hit with column AoEs that deal higher damage the closer they are to the tethered knights, in addition to inflicting magic vulnerability up. Finally, the 5 no-mechanic players will head to the east wall and spread out. To avoid being struck by the tether knights, these players should always leave 2 tiles between themselves and the nearest intercardinal. A perfectly spread group can have 2 tiles between every player here, but that isn't necessary. We just want to spread enough that there is no chance we will walk into each other's twisters. With everyone in their initial positions, we stand in place until the Twisting Dive, Knight Tethers, and Blue Prey all resolve simultaneously. At this point we drop our twisters. I always just react to the dive animation, taking a small step forward as I see them resolving. Other players prefer watching the Twisting Dive cast bar in the enmity list, but be aware that these twisters have more of a delay than other twister mechanics the game has had, so be careful not to move too early. If anyone stands in or walks into a twister, they will be deleted, with any nearby players sent on a trip to the wall. While we drop twisters, the warrior and mage knights have appeared at relative north and south, and one of the no-mechanic players has been marked with a green prey icon. This player needs to immediately move to the arena edge opposite the warrior. When the donut resolves later, 2 dragons at relative west and east will dive on the location this marker is dropped. As we dropped our twisters, 2 players also received thunder debuffs, which won't come into play until the end of the mechanic. The dive bomb player leaving will give the remaining 4 no-mechanic players space to spread out for the upcoming cleaves. The blue prey player stays northwest to take their cleave there, while the 2 orange tether players rotate clockwise to position themselves to take their cleaves between the northwest blue prey and the south dive bomb player. This isn't entirely necessary, but makes the next part of the mechanic much safer, and I strongly advise doing so. With everyone in position, the cleaves will resolve, hitting all 8 party members with a narrow conal AoE. As those resolve, 2 players that do not have thunder will be targeted with baits. The first is Altar Flare, a very large circle AoE. There is a lot of delay between when these telegraph and when they resolve. The first circle to telegraph resolves when the 4th and final AoE telegraphs. Use this information to minimize how much space you take up with these massive circles, and be sure not to bait any too close to the warrior, or you will deny the group their final safe spot. The altar flares will always target one of the 4 players on the west side of the arena, the blue prey, the 2 tether players, or the green dive bomb. One of the remaining 4 players that does not have thunder will be targeted with a series of 5 liquid heavens. These AoEs deal light damage on impact and leave behind a fire puddle that will give any players who step into it a lethal dot. These deal magic damage, so if any players with magic vulnerability up are clipped with them, they will die. This is why we have the tethers rotate clockwise after twisters. We don't want any magic vulnerability players near the Liquid Heaven baiter. Note that if either of the baiters die, all of their remaining baits will be distributed to random party members, most likely ending the pool. While the baiters are careful not to drop any bad on the final safe spot, the entire raid makes their way towards the warrior to dodge the empty dimension donut AoE, and we have just one final loose end to tie up. 2 players received thunder debuffs as we dodge the twisters, and these players will explode in a small circle AoE as the donut goes off. This AoE will kill most players, and even if you survive, the paralysis it inflicts will make you wish you were dead. To avoid any players getting hit by the thunder, we have the 6 non-Thunder players stacked next to Thordan inside the donut, while the 2 Thunder players move to the black ring on the far side of the safe spot near the arena wall. All at once, the Warrior's donut AoE, the 2 Thunder debuffs, and the West-East Dragon dive bombs will resolve, and if everyone is positioned properly, the mechanic is over. The fire puddles will persist for a few seconds after Wrath ends, so be mindful not to walk into them when the floor turns black from Empty Dimension. Thordan will next cast the Ancient Quagga. This is a raid-wide AoE like in Phase 2, but deals more potent damage with Thordan's Light of Ascalon buff, so plan your mitigation accordingly. After one auto attack, Thordan casts Heavenly Heal on the main tank, followed by 3 Ascalon's Might Tank Buster Cleaves. If you have a warrior, you can home gang all 4 of these for free, but I would otherwise recommend not using your invulnerability here in favor of a tank swap with cooldowns, in order to make a Phase 6 mechanic much safer. After the tank busters resolve, Thordan will teleport mid and summon the Knights before casting Death of the Heavens, his second major exhibition mechanic. After Thordan disappears, a warrior knight will appear near the center of the arena. We use this knight as relative north for the duration of the mechanic, and line up in front of him from west to east. My groups have the ranged on the outside, the melee beside them, the healers beside the ranged, with the tanks on the very inside. You can customize this line to your group's needs, but be aware that the players near the center have slightly harder jobs. Shortly after we line up, 4 players will receive a Doom debuff, indicated by the dark red aura swarming around them. We designate these 4 players Doom 1 through Doom 4 from left to right, with the remaining 4 players being non-Doom 1 through non-Doom 4 from left to right. After determining our number, we each move to an assigned position based on whether we have Doom and what our number is. The non-Dooms will move to the arena edge at west, northwest, northeast, and east, while the Dooms will move to the west edge of the large black circle on the arena, southwest, southeast, and east on the large black circle. The players on the intercardinal should be aware that standing directly on the intercardinal is not safe. I always just line myself up with the west or east edge of the large black circle, making a large H pattern, but standing about 1 tile or 1 tick on the arena edge, closer to relative north or south, will see you out of harm's way. After a delay, several things will occur at once. 2 spear bros at relative northwest and northeast will blast the arena with column AoEs in an X-shaped pattern. A dragon at relative south will cauterize straight up the center of the arena, and all 8 party members will be hit with Lightning Storm, a small circle AoE that inflicts lightning resistance down. Additionally, the 4 non-Doom players will leave behind a white circle that will come into play later in the mechanic. On top of all of that, a warrior has appeared at relative north and is casting the same heavy impact rock AoEs that we saw during Phase 2, with 1 small circle AoE hitting his proximity, before growing into larger and larger ring AoEs. We also have more twisters to deal with. You can once again use the Enmity List cast bar, but I think the easiest way to think of this mechanic is, when the second rock AoE hits, move for twister. However you process this, drop your twister on the second rock hit, and make your way to the center of the arena. Closer players can typically dodge into the second rock hit safely as they drop their twisters, while farther players need to wait for the third rock hit before dodging into that. After we all arrive at center, we have to deal with a set of PlayStation chains, just as we did during Phase 1. We handle these a bit differently than before. 2 circles will always land on the 2 Doom players that are farthest from one another. The 2 crosses will always target 2 random non-Doom players. Finally, the squares and triangles will each target 1 Doom and 1 non-Doom. There will be a radial knockback, Faith Unmoving, from center. and we need to knock in such a way that all shapes are knocked directly opposite of their partner. While all Doom players are knocked back to one of the small white circles the non-Dooms dropped earlier, as moving into these small white circles will cleanse their Doom. The way I prefer positioning here is fairly straightforward. I play a macro for the party, and every player has a fixed position based on their shape and Doom status. The non-Doom crosses always take relative north and south, the baited Doom circles always take east and west, the Doom triangle and square take northwest and northeast, while the non-Doom square and triangle take relative southwest and southeast. While positioning to knock back, players also need to identify the two gazes, one from an eye and one from Thordan, on the outside of the arena. The gaze is snapshot at the moment the players are hit by the knockback, so after being knocked back, players can move freely without fearing hysteria. There is a small danger of being knocked back into the wall, but so long as players do not stand outside of the black ring in the center of the arena, this will never happen. If everyone knocks back correctly, all chains will break, every player will be hit with a Heaven's Flame Circle AoE, and we move into the final part of the mechanic. 8 Meteor Circle adds will spawn on the Cardinals and Intercardinals near the outside of the arena. This is a DPS check in which all 8 must be defeated before resolving. Jobs like Dancer and Astrologian have AoEs that can hit all 8 of these, and the DPS check is very doable without Limit Break, but I would suggest at least during Prog to have your caster or physical range to LB 3 of the meteors. You can have the caster always target 3 specific meteors, but to make their life easier, we just have our caster target what they get knocked back near, while the rest of the party adjusts away from them. With all party members alive, and a Limit Break killing 3 of the meteors, the DPS check is trivial, even if a bit of damage lands on meteors that will ultimately be hit with the Limit Break. After defeating the meteors, Thordan will become targetable again, and immediately begin casting another Ancient Quagga, so mitigate as necessary. After one auto attack, he next casts another Heavenly Heal into 3 Ascalon Smite Cleaves, which we resolve with another tank swap. After the tank busters, Thordan will throw out one final auto attack before entering his Enrage cast, Etheric Burst. Upon dropping under 3% health, Thordan will drop his sword and yield to the party. Stopping damage and allowing him to flee will see the party progress to phase 6, while killing Thordan will time loop the party back to the Eyes phase, but without the buffs that allow us to damage them.